Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to see all your lovely faces here today. Thank you for coming. I'm Lauren Bojarski, like they said. I am a geriatric neurologist. I specialize in memory care. All my patients call me Dr. Bojo, so if you ever see me in the supermarket, feel free to call me Dr. Bojo. I'm also assistant professor, and I'm associate program director, so do a lot of teaching. But today, I want to teach you about something else. I want to tell you a story that actually came from a patient of mine. They told me 4 words that changed the trajectory of my career forever, really. And so I wanted to give you a backstory, a little bit on the context of how I started being who I am today. So the setting is July 2020. And if you guys recall, that was the year of the pandemic. So we had just had the pandemic hit in March. I was in medical school at the time. Unfortunately, with COVID, everything shut down, the world shut down. And unfortunately, I did not physically get to graduate. I always joke with my patients that I didn't actually graduate medical school. I got my diploma in the mail because my graduation was canceled and I didn't get to celebrate with my friends. So I was already having a little bit of imposter syndrome at that point, feeling like maybe I wasn't good enough, and that was really going to be the thing. You know, how sometimes we are looking forward to something that's so important in our life. That's going to be our defining moment of who we are as a person. That was graduation of medical school for me. The reason why is because I was a first-generation college graduate. My parents didn't graduate college, and to say that, plus I went to medical school, that was a big deal. My family had been so supportive, my husband, my parents, and to have that was going to be the biggest deal of my life, and that was taken away from me. And I was heartbroken, and the imposter syndrome grew and grew. So then we fast forward a couple months, the heat of the pandemic, July 2020, I have my first job as a doctor. I had graduated medical school, obviously, became a doctor, was working in the hospital, was called down to see a patient in the emergency room. And I get down there, I do her history, I do her physical, start talking about her treatment plan. She was very sick, very confused. She had COVID. And she told me the 4 words that I will never forget the rest of my life. You aren't my doctor. And this sent me into a tailspin. In that moment, I got goosebumps. I had chest pain. My body went numb. I felt like I was looking at myself in the room. I did not know what was happening. I felt really hot. I had personal protective equipment on because it was COVID, right? We were protecting ourselves. It got too hot. It got too heavy. And I had to run out of the room. I excused myself, and I sat in the emergency room charge nurse desk, and I started to cry because I didn't know what was happening. My body was physically shutting down, and I had no idea what was going on, and I was scared. But then the doctor part of me, the doctor brain that was inside of there, said, wait a minute, that's not right. Why are you freaking out? She, in my mind, had figured out my greatest fear, that I was an imposter and that I was a fraud and that I had only gotten that far because people didn't know what I knew, that I was not worth it, that I didn't deserve to be there, and that any time security was gonna take me out in cuffs for medical fraud. But again, my doctor brain was reminding me, didn't you do all these things? Didn't you do the hard things to make it here? So why wasn't I internalizing it? Why wasn't I internalizing these successes that I had worked so hard for? I want to tell you about 3 lessons that those 4 words taught me. The first lesson is that we're all imposters. That sounds weird, right? We should probably delineate what imposterism is, imposter syndrome is first. So I'm going to break it down. It's this self-perception of phoniness despite accolades, despite leadership potential, despite all of these achievements that you've had. It's the inability to internalize them, and it's an impaired self-perception. The reason I think it's important to know the definition is because while imposter syndrome is the thing that was coined in 1978, and that's what we know the most about, there's a lot of connotation of a pathological syndrome with that, like it's a bad thing, and it is. But there's a lot of research now that implies that it should be called imposter phenomenon. which actually implies this constellation of symptoms with an unknown cause. And in fact, that's actually what imposter syndrome is. It's this cognitive distortion that you are not good enough. It's your own self-assessment that you think you aren't enough. And we actually know through a lot of research that self-assessment is actually faulty. There were a bunch of studies done even in physicians who you would think, high achievers, overachievers, and they showed that no matter what stage in their career, early, middle, late, people about to retire, each one of them, if they had imposter syndrome at first, it didn't matter how many accolades they accrued, they still had imposter syndrome way down the line. So we know that our self-assessment is faulty. We also don't know the prevalence of imposter phenomenon, imposter syndrome, whatever you'd like to call it. The range is very variable, from 8% to 86%, and I would argue that the reason for that is because I think we all sometimes have imposter syndrome, right? There's always been that time where you say, am I really good enough for this? Do I really deserve this promotion at work? Obviously, in my opinion, I think the answer is yes, but it's really important to understand from an evolutionary standpoint. Humans have been made to adapt, to change, to evolve. Imposter syndrome, in its original form, is a promotion of oneself. It's the evolutionary want to better yourself over time. But imposter syndrome is the extreme of that. It's where you're no longer internalizing your successes and you're just trying to get to that next thing thinking, oh, this will be it. This will be the time where I really feel like I've made it. But you never get there. I'm sure this might resonate with a lot of you in the audience today. Sometimes we ask ourselves, are we good enough? So I encourage you to understand that there's an evolutionary reason why those thoughts sometimes come into your mind, but that we need to have a growth mindset in order to overcome them. Which leads me to my second lesson. Just as medicine is an art, so is resilience. I continued doing medicine, right? Panic attack or not, I continued on doing my work. My patients needed me. So I kept going into patient rooms. And sometimes I would have thoughts that were not very positive. I'm not smart enough. I'm not brave enough. Or I'm scared. These automatic negative thoughts just came in without my wanting them to be there. And I hated it. I wanted to overcome it. And I realized through months of counseling and understanding and telling people how I was feeling that I was trying to achieve this sense of perfection that was impossible for anyone to have. Anytime I made a mistake, I was what I called a crap human. That's terrible. What if someone told me that they made a mistake? Would I call them a crap human? No. So why was I doing that to myself? Again, I realized perfection was not the answer, but that in order to grow, I had to make a little bit of a change every day. I had to continue to improve. I had to evolve like humankind. I'm sure you guys have heard the fake it till you make it. Well, that just furthers imposter syndrome. I encourage you not to say fake it till you make it. Instead, face it till you ace it. You will ace it one day, right? That's the whole point of practice. When you were born, you did not come out knowing how to run a marathon. You had to work for it, baby steps, right? That's the whole part of this facing it till you ace it, right? It's not always easy. You're gonna have hard days. Just like my medicine, when I was practicing it, sometimes it was easy, sometimes it was hard. Sometimes I had really difficult patients. And my resilience depended on how I was able to make those baby steps forward every day. And so I did grow resilience. I did. But it was an art form, and some days were good, and some days were bad. The lesson number 3 that I have for you is that vulnerability can be a very powerful asset. So again, I was still in my medical field, doing my thing, trying every day to be a little bit better. But I realized that when I told other people how I was feeling, they were feeling the same way. Remember we talked about that range of how variable the prevalence is for imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon? It's because a lot of people were having it too. And we actually came together and we started talking about things. We talked about how we were feeling and how we were having these imposterism feelings and we wanted to overcome them, but that sometimes it was really hard. And so we leaned on each other in those really, really hard moments. And then we started sharing our strengths. Instead of feeling like we were bragging about ourselves, we were actually discussing our strengths with each other and saying, oh, I got an award for this. Congratulations. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And we started feeling these big emotions that we all shared together. And it helped us to thrive. Whereas before, the imposter phenomenon was actually detracting from our successes. It was keeping us back. These negative thoughts of, I'm not enough, I can't do it, I don't want to do it, I'm too scared, I can't. They enabled these emotions to be felt. We were in a safe place, but to overcome the negative thoughts that came along with it and encourage us to be successful. And we did it together. And then we realized, I said, okay, well, if we can do it in this department, why not the institution? So then I went on, started small, encouraging people in my department to be better. We talked about imposter syndrome, we talked about imposter phenomenon. And then I went on to more institutions and started talking there. And then it just grew and grew and grew, and my vulnerability then became my most powerful asset. Me talking about imposter syndrome enabled other people to understand why they were feeling this way and what they wanted out of their life so that they could overcome these thoughts that were negative, still embracing the feelings because your emotions are valid and you are allowed to feel how you feel, but that they shouldn't detract from the successes that you've already had and the potential for greatness that you have within you. So I obviously say the vulnerability can be a very powerful asset, and I encourage you to do so with your friends, your family, and your colleagues as well. So these 4 words that I told you, you're not my doctor, they ruined me. I mean, I felt tortured that she didn't feel comfortable that I was her doctor. But it gave me the hope that I needed, and in my mind, the things that I needed to hear in order to be more confident in my own skin. It sent me in this trajectory where now I get to have national talks like this with y'all so that you can understand how to overcome your imposter syndrome and embrace it, knowing that you can overcome it. I want there to be a time where we all have a growth mindset, that we don't have to be perfect in order to thrive. Encouraging each other's weaknesses and strengths, but knowing that you can overcome the weaknesses just as well as supporting the strengths that you have that come along with it. I empower you to take off your mask, embrace the vulnerability that is discussing imposter phenomenon, and enjoy the journey. This is your journey. No one in the world has what you have. No one in the world has the skill set that you have. And that's so important because the world needs to hear what you have to say. Don't keep it stifled inside. You deserve that promotion. You deserve to ask for help. You deserve to ask for a seat at the table. Even if you don't think you do, you do. And it's very important to understand where these imposter syndrome thoughts come from, because that evolutionarily is trying to help you succeed. But you don't want it to get in the way of where you are going and how far you have come so far. So I encourage you that with this vulnerability, the communication, collaboration, and creativity that comes with it, understand that while resilience is an art form, you are, and you always have been, good enough to have imposter syndrome. Thank you.